There's our new request right there in the system. Our name is placed in there by our automation. We are ready to go. Hello, welcome to part 2 of our paid time off tutorial for Notion. If you were here for part 1, you'll remember looking at our employee handbook to find all of the things that we needed and creating our vacation per YouTube module with our eligibility and balances databases that allow our system to run. If you were not here for part 1, it is linked below. Don't worry, take a look at that first because you do need both of these databases in order to make any of the following things work. The first thing we're going to do today is create the form where our employees can request their time off. We're going to begin that within our balances page. You're going to need to create a new view, so hover next to where it says balances and create a form view. We're going to start today with the recommended questions they give us, but we're going to end up deleting, renaming, doing quite a few things to these because a lot of these questions are going to be solved by automations later in order to prevent user error. We can call this form PTO requests. While this seems counterintuitive, we are going to delete the name property. We are instead going to take our PTO eligibility property and bring that up to the top. Just click and drag in order to do that. Click here to make sure that this sync with property name is turned off because we're going to require this question and rename it as name. This way, it ensures that our person requesting our time off connects their balances and their eligibility, as this is actually our relations property. Now that we have their name there, we can go ahead and delete the manager question. We're going to create an automation for this and our HR director. We do need the request dates. We are going to require that property as well. We are going to leave in the half day. Our checkbox is simply going to be yes, and we're going to add a description. Our description is just going to say optional. To prevent any confusion making employees think that they're required to select that this is a half day. Our person requesting property, we're going to create an automation for that as well. Their reason you do want to allow that to remain. Comp day, again, we do not want our employees requesting comp days. We leave that up to the manager, and we do want to know whether their time off is going to be a vacation or sick time. I'm actually going to require that as well. That means that our 3 required questions are up at the top, and from there, people can choose what they'd like to do at that point. Now we have our form. It's ready to go. You can preview the form here if you'd like to see how it's going to look for your employees, but this is our form. It's connected to our balances, and again, it pulls in many of the properties that we need in order to ensure that both this and our eligibility property page are filled in correctly. Now that we have everything we need for our employees to request their time off, let's take a look at what we need to do in order for them to know how much time they've taken. We're going to go back out to our vacation per YouTube module, and briefly, let's pause to add a button. Our button is going to be add a new PTO request. You can call this something shorter, so this way if you're adding it to a dashboard, you don't have any concerns about your button being cut off. But for now, it's clear. It allows us to remember what we've done. When this button is clicked, we are going to open a page or form, and we are going to select our PTO requests form. You can choose whether you want that to be a side view, a full page, what you'd like to do. We have our button, so let's create our new page. Our page can be called Time Off Tracker for Employees. Again, a lot of these titles are things that are going to be clear for this video and are going to prevent me from having any confusion regarding the actual system that I use for my organization and the ones that we're creating for this video. You can see in my recent pages here that the one that I use for my organization is actually called My Time Off Dashboard, as it's something that's being seen from the employee's point of view. For us, we're going to create our dashboard right here. Again, I put all of my pages into full width just because that's where I'm comfortable. Feel free to do whatever you prefer. The very first thing I like to do on this page is add my button. This will allow employees to create a new request without having to back out of this portal. And I do like to call it the same thing as on the other page, so there's no confusion as to whether or not they're accessing 2 different forms or what the process is. If you remember from last time, this is the dashboard that I actively use. It allows me to see all time off that I've requested. I can view it on a calendar. I can check my existing balances, upcoming days off, how many of my Sundays that I'm allowed to take. If you haven't seen part 1, there is a requirement to the number of Sundays we're allowed to take off during a year where I work, as we only work Sunday through Thursday, the number of sick days I have available, and what I'll be available for next year. And I can view all of my historical time off, not just what I've done this year. In order to create this, we're going to need to go back to our employee time off tracker, and we're going to create an inline database. We're going to link to an existing data source and select our PTO balances. The easiest way to begin is with our historical time off tracker, as that's what's populated here is all dates. Then we can duplicate this view and add a filter just for our current year. Now I am going to go through and hide many of these properties, as the days used and Sundays used, as well as the half-day calculations, are going to be found and reflected within their balances page that we'll create for them, so we don't need to have more information here than necessary. Comp days are something that should only be affected by managers, so I'll hide that as well. The approval by manager and approval by HR are actually going to stay, because that's going to allow the employee to track where it is in the process, and if their manager hasn't approved it after a certain amount of time, they could reach out to them, or if the manager approved it but it hasn't been seen by HR, the employee could give that nudge as well. They don't need to see the person requesting, that's obviously going to be them. The manager and HR director, they're going to know who those people are, so we don't need to have their names there. The PTO eligibility is for the sake of our calculations, along with request year this year and next year, so that's not something that needs to be edited by anyone. Again, it's just to make the program run. So I'm going to go in here into my settings and property visibility, and I'm just going to start turning some of those off. There's going to be some automations that we're going to make in order to fill these properties or lock these properties to prevent employees from changing the approval status, but for right now, this is what we need in order to create our first view for historical time off. While you won't be able to see it reflect much at this point, I am going to go into my settings and group as according to request type, and this is going to allow them to see their sick requests from their vacation requests at a glance. Because it's going to be easier for us, I'm also going to hide the title from this view, and then we can name this as according to historical balances, previous time off requests, whatever you'd like. As I said before, the next view is as simple as right-clicking, duplicating this view. We can call this current year requests. And we're simply going to add a filter that this year is checked. And that will only show vacations pertaining to the current year. Sick time as well. If you remember from the first video, I did say I will regularly call all PTO vacation by accident. Just bear with me on that. We have our first two views created. For our next view, we're going to create a table view, and it's actually going to source from PTO eligibility. Now we do want to filter this down so that it only shows me. So we're going to take our person property and use the me. You're not going to want to select your name because that is going to lock the view to only you for any person looking at it, versus me means that if I look at it, I will be the only one to see it. Same for if my colleague Mark looks at it, he will see only his. Now I'll come over here to start hiding some properties. Make sure that you're hiding them, not deleting them, because they will be removed from our eligibility and balance databases if you actually remove the status. So we're going to hide the person property. I know who I am. I know how many hours I work, so I don't need my status or hours there. I don't need my hire date there. I'm going to want to know how much vacation I'm eligible for, as well as how many vacation days I have left, how many Sundays I have left, how many sick days I have left. I also like to let my employees see how many days they'll be eligible for next year, as well as any requests that they've already put in for next year, make them feel excited if they're about to reach a new milestone, allow them to plan in advance, whatever seems helpful to them. From there, I can get rid of all of the other properties, and by get rid of, I do mean hide. I'll rename this table as balances, and lastly, I'm going to give them a calendar view. Right now it's showing the hire dates of those fake employees that we put in. We are again going to create a filter according to person, and that person is going to be me, so that I only see things relevant to me and my time off. That's it for the necessary views for my employees. You can play around with aestheticism all that you'd like. They do add a calendar there for that one, but you could click to rename and it allows you to change the icons. Play around with that all you'd like, but I am going to go back to our vacation per YouTube page. And we can begin by creating our manager dashboard. For that, we're going to create a new page. We'll just call this Manager Time Off Review Portal. Before I continue any further with this portion of the tutorial, I should preface that my organization does have page level permissions turned on, which essentially means that any person who is not included in a person property cannot see that entry. This prevents people from being able to see other people's vacation requests. Now, there are some workarounds that I have done for our managers to be able to see other people's requests so that they can have that full-scale calendar that I showed in video 1. You could limit this to just allowing them to see their direct reports, and all you would have to do for that is put them in the manager property Your HR director would obviously be able to see everybody as they would be placed in that HR director property. It's up to you whether or not you want to create that calendar view that allows your managers to see everyone from all departments. We are going to do that for the sake of this build, but just know that this can be as private or as public as you'd like it to be. I am going to take a pause at this time and show you how to set up those page level permissions so that you can continue on in your tutorial with the same steps that I'm going to use. In order to do that, we have to come back out to our module. We're going to go to PTO balances. The one thing that you have to know about setting up the inline databases the way we've done is that it did create the database in its own page in order for it to be housed there. So it doesn't live only on this page where we're able to make all of our changes. If you click open as full page, this is actually the true database and where it lives. You have to go here in order to enable page level permissions. It won't allow you to do it from just that page there. So we would go to share and we would go to add a new rule, and we would do person requesting. Can edit, create rule. We would also add a new rule where manager can edit and HR director can edit. That means that the person requesting can only see theirs because that is the only time they will be included. The person in the manager property will be able to see their own personal requests as well as anyone where they are labeled the manager, and the HR director will be able to see all requests including their own. We're going to do the exact same thing to our eligibility database. So the same thing here. All we had to do was expand. We've created new rules for can edit. Now we're ready to return to that manager page, so this way we can create the same views that I have with mine. I've made our manager page full width, and for this we're going to create a calendar view. We're going to link to an existing data source, and we're going to use our PTO balances. The filter that we're going to need to apply is where manager is me. That will ensure that they're seeing every person they manage, not just their own requests. If they'd like to see just their own requests, they can go into the My Time Off dashboard. Again, when we're working with multiple views, I do like to remove the title, and then we can add our first table view. Again, that's going to be linked to the PTO balances, and for this, we're going to need the filters where manager is me, and also where approval by manager is to do. I'll rename this pending requests. This way they know what they're looking at. And the next version that we'll do is completed requests. Let's look at these properties. They're obviously going to need to know the name, request type, and request dates. The days used, they'll get that eligibility alert, so they don't have to worry about that. They don't need to worry about the approval by HR because that happens after the manager does it. I am going to move that approval by manager all the way to the end because that is one of the last things that I want them to see. We do want them to see the person requesting. They don't need to know who the manager is. They are the manager. Same with the HR director. They shouldn't need to see it link back to the eligibility page. The request year, this year, and next year are all going to be included in the request dates. We have that reason and approval by manager. And really funny story, the reason that I had noted earlier to make sure that you're hiding the properties and not deleting them is because I had accidentally deleted our days used alert and I did just have to go back in and recover the version history for that. And if that's something that you don't know how to do, quick tangent, feel free to skip ahead about 30 seconds or so if you know how to do this, but you can press these three dots in the corner, click on version history, and see all previous versions of this page. If you need to adjust or anything, you can click on it and you can restore that version. All right, back to the tutorial. Our next view is exactly the same thing, so I'm just going to click on it and duplicate it, and this time we can name it Finalize Requests. All we're going to do is change our filter so that the approval by manager is complete. The last thing we want to do is make that calendar where our manager would be able to see all departments' time off, and so this is where we bring in that page level permission. So we would go to our PTO balances, and we're going to create a new property here. And this is also going to be a person property, so this way we can attach those page level permissions. And we can call this Manager Overview. Now we would open up our expanded page, and we would add a new rule where Manager Overview can edit, create. This will now fall into part of our automations that we'll create, which will allow the manager to see any and every request that is submitted. So let's go back to our manager approval, and we can create our last calendar view. Again, I'm going to duplicate the one that we already have, And we're going to adjust the filter on it so that instead of manager being me, it will be manager overview contains me. Now you could go in and rename any of your tabs that you haven't done, and we're ready for our final dashboard. We'll come back out to this vacation per YouTube. We will create a new page. We can call this HR Director Time Off Review Portal and make it full width. If you remember, his did start off looking identical to the manager portal. However, he and I recently sat down, we looked at what was and wasn't working for him and made some customizations directly for him. So we'll start off again with a calendar view. This will again be attached to our PTO balances. We'll hide the database title, so this way we can create our other views. Now for him, because he'll be in that HR manager position and he will be attached to every single one, there's not any customizations we have to make. Every single request will show up presently for him. But what we will do is we'll come over here to this property visibility and we will turn on approval by HR and approval by manager. So this way he can see directly whether or not the manager has already made their first step approval and if it's time for him to make his approval. The next thing he needs is a way to see all of the outstanding requests. So we'll create a new table view. Again, all of the views in here are linked to our balances. His filters will be where approval by HR is to do and where this year is checked. So that's all current upcoming requests. And then for him, I also like to come in here and group by employee. Now you don't see the properties here, but you can go to your settings and property visibility. He's going to want the names and dates, request type. He does like to see the number of days used and Sundays used. He likes to have his alert. For him, we do keep both the approval by manager and approval by HR. That approval by manager is going to let him confirm that they've reviewed the request, and the approval by HR is obviously where he's going to change that status. We're going to duplicate this view to create our next one. For this one, we can call this year time off. And we're going to change the filter so that instead of approval by HR is to do, it's going to be complete. And this year he can see all days that were taken off this year, approved or denied. Lastly, we're going to create this time off chart that you had seen previously. It's going to allow you to see at a glance how many days were taken, how many of them were vacation, and how many of them were sick. So we're going to come back over to our HR Director time off page. We're going to create a new view, and it's going to be a chart. We want our chart to be a horizontal bar. Charts are one of the few places where I think Notion could stand to be a little bit more user-friendly, but we're going to just go to what to show, and we're going to show days used sum. And then we're going to group by request type. For our y-axis, we're going to search by person requesting. Let's apply a couple of filters here. We're going to make sure that all of the days shown here are part of this year. We're going to make sure that they are all days that were actually approved. And we're going to make sure that none of the days are comped. Now, of course, there's not really any information to pull off here. I'm the only one who has any days in at this point in time, so we won't really see this populate as it is right now, but we can take a tour of it when we start adding some more information in, and we'll probably really just be referencing the one over here. You can see the filters that we have there, and just so this way you can see it is the days summed, grouped by request type, and the person requesting property here. Just this way you feel confident that this is built exactly the same way and that the information is going to process the same way despite the fact that it's not populated as of yet. Crazy as it may seem, that's our build. In terms of our vacation per YouTube here, we have everything that we have in our other one. We have a button, we have our time off tracker dashboard, we have our manager review, our HR director review, and then the databases that make it run. Now, in order to make the magic happen, it's time for some automations. For our first automation, we're going to want to start on our form. Our form, we are going to ask it to, every time a page is added, we want to edit the property where the person requesting is the page creator. We also want to edit the property so that the HR director is, and we'll say me for the sake of this exercise. We're going to do one last thing as well, which is we're going to edit the property name. We're going to create a formula, and we're going to tell it first name of whoever submitted form plus request type. Example, Rebecca vacation. Great, fantastic, save. So all three of these actions will occur at the same time when a new page is created. Enable. We could also go back and edit so that our action is to edit property so that manager overview includes any and all managers' names that we have. Marketing director, HR director, production director, etc., so on and so forth. We would be able to put in all of those so that when a new page is created, every manager is added, and then they would be able to see these requests on that comprehensive calendar that we created for them. The next automation we can create is one where when a manager denies, it would be the final denial. It doesn't need to move forward to HR. That just looks like approval by manager is set to deny, then set approval by HR to deny as well. We also want to make sure that managers know if an employee's dates have changed, so we can add a new automation where when request dates is edited, edit approval by HR, not reviewed, and approval by manager, also not reviewed. Adding in our manager automation will kickstart a few different automations that we need to do. For this, whenever the person requesting is, let's say, marketing team member number 1, 2, and 3, we would edit the property of manager to be marketing director. We would also send a notification to the person property of manager, and we would say a new PTO request has been submitted. I'm going to cancel this specifically because that's a lot of properties where I am the person responsible at this point in time, and we don't necessarily need this to be filled for you to see what comes next. So I'll discard that automation, but when an approval by a manager is set as approved, then we would like to notify a person property, our HR director, please review open PTO request. So we know that the one is being denied if the manager denies it, and now it's being forwarded to the HR director if the manager has approved it. Something important to note, at least the way Notion is set up right now, is that one automation cannot trigger another automation. So if we go in here and we try to set up an automation where when approval by HR is complete, then send notification to person property, person requesting, please review your PTO status. Currently, because there is an automation where if their manager denies it, the HR setting is automatically denied, that would not trigger this automation to occur. So we cannot set up this automation. Instead, what we can do is we can submit so that when it's approved, we can say your PTO has been approved. Enable. And we can go in here to where manager deny is final deny, and we can also send notification to the person property of the person requesting your PTO request has been denied. As of right, all right, those are our automations. Are you ready to see the system work? We're going to go back out to our vacation per YouTube. We're going to click our little button. Our form is open. We're going to select our name. The reason these new pages are all here is this is actually from our PTO eligibility page here. I did not name any of my coworkers. Now we've got all of our awfully confusing names in there. Let's go back. You can see what this looks like. Add our new PTO request. Select your name. Because of our person level properties, you will only see your own name when you fill out this form. Because I have full permissions to view all portions of the database, I will see all names. So this will not look like this when somebody else goes to submit their form. They will only see their name available to them. They will think that it's interesting that they have to select their name, but this is a cheat code for us. This connects it back to that eligibility page, so this way it checks what number of days they're eligible for and updates their balances with that alert so that their manager knows whether or not they're allowed to request those days off. It is a little tiny bit clunky, but it is the best way I've been able to find in order to make this work for us without having to make us as managers go in and do a few extra steps. So I'm going to select my name. I'm going to put in a request date, let's say from today until the 28th. We're going to say that it's vacation time. We're going to leave it from a half day. We don't need to put in our reason. This is just for us. And we're going to submit. Now, if we give this a few seconds here, you'll see that because I'm put in as the HR director, we're going to get some notifications here. We're going to get some notifications saying that I was mentioned in this page, and we're going to get a notification that telling me as the HR director, I need to take a look at this page that was created. Let's take a look at how this reflects on our personal dashboard. You can see that my name automation did work. It was titled Rebecca Vacation, as I set up in that formula. We see our dates from May 22nd to May 28th. It's a vacation request. It's not yet been approved by my manager nor by HR. If I take a look at my calendar, I can see that I had a request already in for the 7th, and here's my new request. We can also look and see that it hasn't reflected on our balances yet because of the fact that we have this set up so that we're only seeing days deducted when they've been approved by our manager. One fun thing you can do is set conditional colors on your calendar that allows an employee to know what they're looking at from a glance. You would come into your settings, you would find conditional color, you would select request type is sick. You can choose to match the color of the options that you have here, or you can choose a different color. So match option would make it purple, but if you change it, you could make it yellow, is what I typically do for sick. You could come in here and say request type is, and make it vacation. And typically for vacation, I go with green. And then these show up in order of which way you have them here. So if I add another and I say approval by HR is not reviewed, we would put it as gray. Now, watch as I move this to the top, it will take precedence over the vacation being green because it's not approved. So I only want it to light up on my calendar once I know that for sure I'm approved to take that time. Let's go back to looking at how this all works. So we've seen how it shows up on our employee dashboard here. Let's go see what it looks like for a manager. Now, I never set myself as the manager, so I shouldn't have any pending requests in here because we did delete that automation with me there because it was too many things to be looking at one time. But if we come back out to the HR director, we did leave me as the HR director. In here, you can see on the chart that I've taken a half day already this year. That's, again, what has been approved. On the calendar view, you can see that I have approved from the manager perspective and the HR perspective, and you can see my current request that it's not yet been approved by a manager, and so therefore it's not time for me to adjust this as the HR manager. I have it here for time off that needs review, and I can go to time off this year just to see what's already been approved. Now let's go look and see what all the fancy calculations did. On our eligibility page, you can see Rebecca PTO, you can see that I'm eligible for 15 days, that 4 Sundays, 21.5 total days used. You can see that the vacation taken is only a half day. It's only going to reflect what's been approved. No Sundays or sick time taken. My remaining vacation as of current balance, remaining Sundays this year. Let's go out to balances. Again, all of those are what's making the balances page run. The real magic is here. Again, my Rebecca vacation showed up with the automatic title. You can see that I have not used those days yet because they're yet to be approved by a manager. No Sundays being used yet because they're yet to be reviewed by a manager. Not a half day, not a comp day. The person requesting is me. The HR director was automatically added in as me. If we had set up a manager or an automation for our manager overview, then those would appear there, the reason, and then the magic of the PTO eligibility was placed right here. So that's how that relation is working to allow everything to update on the eligibility side and the balances side at the same time. We see that it's 2026, this year is checked, next year is not, so it's able to make these calculations over here that if I go and I approve this at the manager level and approve this at the HR level, all of a sudden I've taken 5 days, one of them is a Sunday, and we can go back into my eligibility and we'll see how this has been adjusted to having taken 26.5 days and 5.5 days for this year with 1 Sunday, remaining vacation of 9.5 days, remaining Sundays of 3, Still 20 days vacation requested next year when I'm only eligible for 15. That's why that alert was there on the balances side. And our PTO balances show that this is connected back to my Rebecca vacation page. One other automation that I thought of as I was showing you here back on our balances page is that if you want your HR director to have override ability of your manager, you would be able to create another automation stating that when approval by HR is set as approved, change approval by a manager to approved. That would give them access to override, very similarly to the automation that says that if approval by manager is denied, then approval by HR is denied. It's very similar. It would just be if you wanted your HR to override what the manager had to say, or if you wanted them to be able to approve without the manager being present. That said, the HR manager will still have the ability to click on the approved button here and there. My approvals also just came in saying that my time off has been approved by my HR director, so you can see that updates there after about a minute. The last change you can make if you like is that you could go into your eligibility and go back to where we made these page level permissions. And now that your form is set up, you can adjust your page level permissions so that anyone in the person field can view but not edit. That would prevent them from being able to change manager or HR approval status. They would still be able to submit any requests through the form. Now, the only thing to be aware is that they would not be able to edit the existing dates on their requests that they've submitted. They would have to resubmit a new form each time they want to make an adjustment and tell their manager that they're changing it. That would obviously negate the automation that we did that reminds the HR director and the manager that the dates need to be revisited on a request. But that's up to you how you want to handle that. If you think just hiding the property is enough that your employee would never find it and never know how to edit it, great, all well and good. This just kind of helps keep everybody honest if you want to do it this way. It's up to you how much work you want to have to do in order to follow up with your employees to make sure that their managers know exactly what's being done and that there aren't duplicate entries at any point in time. That's it. You would do the same thing over on your PTO balances page, make the same changes to those page level permissions specifically for the property person requesting, and you're good to go. You have a full-fledged, ready to operate entire vacation module, everything from the requests to the computer behind the system, all of it's ready to go. If this seemed like a lot, if you weren't totally into building that much, if you're afraid to mess with the formulas without the help of the AI, I totally understand. I do have this template available for sale. There's also an add-on where if you're afraid to mess around with the formulas in the system, then you can set up time with me. I'll go in, I'll make all the changes for you, so this way it feels ready to run for your business. All of that is done through my Square site. Please, in the comments, feel free to put any specific use cases that you need, and I will look forward to eventually building that tutorial for you. Have a wonderful